Let's say you were a new Ninjago fan or a fan of the show but you never got into any of the sets. But you decided you wanted to get into your own Ninjago minifigure collection, and you decided that you wanted to go for a certain budget when it came to that idea. But you didn't actually know what to get and what to not get because you just simply didn't know what the prices were like when it came to Ninjago. And I do think that is an interesting concept because there are a lot of different options for all of your beloved ninja minifigures. Now, I would say the option above all else is go with the minifigures that you like the most, but I thought I would give a scenario where you wanted to spend the least amount of money compared to when you wanted to spend the most amount of money possible. And that is what today's video is going to be about. This is if you wanted to spend the most amount of money on a Ninjago collection compared to if you wanted to spend the least amount of money, and the prices that would go along with it. And this is if you wanted the core 6, Aaron, Sora, Wildfire, Wu, Garmadon, and if you really wanted to, a couple of allies to go along with them. And honestly, I think it's interesting to see the results. And make sure you stay tuned in for the end where I show you each collection side by side and let you know the price difference between the two, because honestly the answer may actually shock you because the difference is very sharp, and I honestly don't think you will expect the numbers that I came to because I didn't believe them myself. To get this out of the way as well, this is if you didn't really care about having a unified set of ninja. This is if you just wanted, simply put, the best bang for your buck in comparison to the most pricey of the bunch. If you want a completely unified ninja collection, the most expensive would be the DX uniforms, and that is if you get DX Lloyd specifically. He is not canon, so if you wanted a completely canon set, it would actually be the Stone Armor Ninja, and if it was the cheapest, it would be the Core Ninja. So that is out the way if you wanted them to be unified, but this is if you wanted more of a diverse pick. And like always, there is a criteria to this. There is a couple different things that I depended on when it came to the picks, and if you take them away, it would be a different answer. But in my opinion, I think this is a very good criteria. The first thing is that it has to be a fully completed minifigure, and that is the one that is most accurate to the show. For example, the Core Ninja, they are going to have their shoulder pads as their picks, and any other minifigure associated would also have that taken to place. Also, the Tournament of Sources Aaron and Sora, I am counting their non-shoulder pad versions because they didn't have shoulder pads in the show itself, so it has to be a fully completed minifigure. And to expand on that, like I said, it has to be canon to the show. I will show the non-canon ones because they may be what you want to actually have, but at the same time, I do want it to be fully accurate to the show itself. And the final two things, for one, it has to be a ninja suit specifically, and you will see why that comes into play later on. And the other thing is that it was decided by the Bricklink listing, sorted by new under the British pound, and it was the lowest current asking price as of August of 2025, so it may be different if you're watching this, say, a year from now. If you are, hello, but at the same time, you may have a different answer by that point in time, so keep into mind the time that I have actually made this video. But let's actually get into what we're going to be looking at for these collections, and let's start off with the Core 6. Let's start off with the Fire Ninja himself specifically, and for his cheap variant, there is a very common misconception with who actually takes that place for Kai. A lot of people believe it's actually Legacy Kai, but in recent time, that has actually been overtaken by a different minifigure, and that is the Dragon's Rising Season 1 variant of him. This minifigure did release in a handful of the Season 1 sets, but more specifically, he came out in a very cheap poly bag with wrapped on, and because of it, both of them became very cheap minifigures to actually get. So if you did want this Kai brand new, you would only have to pay about 80 pence, which honestly is a steal because the Season 1 minifigures are really good. You're not getting a bad Kai minifigure by any stretch of the imagination. So that is the pick for the cheap Kai minifigure. As for the expensive one, this is where one of my criteria came into play, being a ninja suit, because the most expensive version of Kai currently is his movie casual outfit. It is £50, and honestly, that is very scary to see because I didn't even pay a fifth of that when I got him. But if you wanted to get technically the most expensive Kai, you would be getting the casual one. But if you wanted specifically a ninja uniform for him, you would actually be getting Stone Armor Kai. He came out in one pack specifically as a Target exclusive, and now has a value brand new of £46 on Bricklink. And again, in similar vein to Season 1 Kai, it is a fantastic minifigure and even comes with a lot of exclusive pieces. So you're kind of laughing in this regard, but that is the pick for the expensive Kai. Let's go to the second ninja, which in this case is actually going to be Jay, and this honestly was an interesting one, and I think more of a debatable one because it's a controversial pick at best. But for the cheap Jay minifigure, you would actually be getting his digisuit. This minifigure is only £1 brand new, and it kind of makes sense because he did come out in 5 sets in the Prime Empire wave, and more specifically, a lot of them were the smaller sets, so he just became quite cheap by proxy. But it is a fantastic minifigure, but it's definitely more of a departure from the rest, so I would keep that in mind. If you don't really like the digisuits, you could always pay about 20 pence more and you could get, say, his core suit, his Legacy 2 suit. You could also get his mech suit from Dragon's Rising if you wanted, but that is actually not even canon, so keep that in mind. But if you wanted the absolute cheapest J minifigure or complete J minifigure, you would be getting Digi-J. It's not a bad pick at all though. However, if you did want to go for his most expensive option, you would actually have a choice between two. I'm going to mention one of them because even though I don't consider it canon, I know a lot of people do, but I personally don't really consider it canon due to the fact it's not exactly accurate, and also this outfit wouldn't really go with the other ninja because all the others also don't have these kind of variants. So in this case, I'll mention it just because. But NRGJ is in fact the most expensive of the J minifigures. Brand new, it is £130, but if you wanted to go for a regular ninja outfit, you would actually be going with his DX look, which is about £40, and honestly, in similar vein to all the others, got a couple nice unique prints and does look really good at the exact same time. Honestly, a really good pick, but if you definitely wanted the definitively most expensive one, go for NRG. But simply put, DX is a regular ninja uniform that would go with the rest. Next up then is actually Cole, and his cheapest variant should have surprised me, but at the same time it didn't, because I was expecting these variants to come up at some point, but honestly I wasn't really expecting it for Cole. But in this case, his cheapest minifigure is actually his Legacy uniform, and if you wanted to buy it brand new, it would be about 76 pence. And honestly, it's a very nice looking uniform. It might be a bit more basic for some people, but I think the Legacy uniforms were just fantastic nonetheless, and honestly, this is a really good looking Cole to get for such a good price. But don't worry, if you did want his most expensive variant, you could then, in similar vein to Kai, actually go to his stone armor uniform. This is, in my opinion, one of the best stone armor ninja, because even though it's got the same torso as the others, I really like the leg print, and I like having the human variant of his ghost head print. Honestly, it's just a really nice addition to have to any collection, so it's definitely worth it for the unique prints alone. And if you wanted it for a brand new version, you would actually be paying about £41 for it, which is quite high, especially considering it's just a Lego minifigure, but at the same time, like all the other expensive minifigures, you are getting some really nice prints to go along with it. So if you're going for the most expensive minifigures, this is definitely a good one to have. Then to round off your core 4, you would be going to Zane, and Zane is the beginning of a habit you will see for the next few ninja, but his cheapest variant of his minifigures is actually his core uniform, which is a very nice looking one. The core uniforms in general are just really nice looking, and for the Zane, you would be paying about £1.20 for it, which is the most expensive so far of the cheapest ninja, and actually is the most expensive of the bunch. So for reference, that is how much you would be paying for the cheapest ninja individually, but £1.20 for a core Zane is not bad whatsoever. However, then you do get to his most expensive, and in similar vein to Jay, it is actually his NRG outfit, which is £40, but in similar vein again, I don't really consider it canon, so I have mentioned it just to show that that is the most expensive Zane, but I'm just not really going to include it in this case. But if you wanted his most expensive canon minifigure, you're actually going to be going for his kimono outfit, which is £30 brand new, and honestly, it is a very nice looking one. I am very biased towards the kimono outfits, so I am glad I was able to show it in some way in this video. So I'm glad to say that the kimono is the most expensive Zane, and I would definitely say you won't be disappointed if you had the minifigure. And with that, the core 4 are rounded off, but let's complete our ninja team and get the other two in there. So to start off with the green ninja himself, he is the continuation on what I said started with Zane, because his cheapest version of his minifigure is actually the core variant. Now there are a couple contingents on this, such as his Dragon's Rising Master Lloyd minifigure being slightly cheaper, but it's not a ninja uniform. However, this one actually is. So his core outfit is the winner here, and it is worth about £1.10. Honestly, quite good for a Lloyd minifigure, and also a very nice looking one at that. However, then you do get to his most expensive, and this is where things become a lot more difficult, because Lloyd's pick for his most expensive, following the criteria, is actually possibly the 4th most expensive of all of the Lloyds. So, to round through it, his most expensive is of course his DX uniform, and there's only one listing of it brand new currently on Bricklink for £500. Oh my god. So, there is that. However, if you just wanted to go used, you're still paying about 300, so keep that in mind. The next one then is actually Lloyd Possessed by Morrow, which is about £50, which is technically a Lloyd, but it's also Morrow, and it's not really a Lloyd outfit, so I didn't really want to include it. And then his third up is actually his Air Jitsu variant, which in similar vein to NRG, it's just simply not really canon to the show in my opinion, but that one is £34. So keep those in mind. They are more expensive Lloyds if you want the definitively most expensive, but its most expensive canon minifigure is then his ZX look, and honestly it's a fantastic one, it's an iconic one, it has everything that you would need, and it has a value of about £29, so not bad honestly when it comes to an expensive Lloyd, but there are definitely much more expensive options out there for him. And then the last of the bunch then is of course Nia, and her cheapest variant is continuing and also ending off this section of cheapest Ninjago minifigures, because this is the last time we are going to see the core minifigures pop up in any way. But core Nia is the cheapest Nia minifigure that you can get. It is £1.09, so it is a decent one and the cheapest of the core ones so far, and honestly one of the better looking core suits at that, so you're kind of winning on this one because it's a fantastic Nia minifigure. But again then, in similar vein to Lloyd, her most expensive, there are a couple above it, because her Air Jitsu suit is definitively the most expensive Nia minifigure, because it is £55 brand new, but again, not really canon to the show. And then next up, falls into the criteria once again, because then it's her Kabuki outfit, but that is not a ninja uniform, so I did not count it, but it is more expensive. It is £30. So those two are the top 2 most expensive ones, but then the top most expensive ninja outfit is actually the Day of the Departed variant, which is £17, and honestly a very good looking Nia at that. It has the modern look of a ninja outfit while also looking like a pilot suit, so honestly a really good pick for a Nia minifigure, and definitely a great one to have in the collection. But like I said, if you do want the most expensive, the Air Jitsu and the Kabuki ones are the way to go. But with the 6 out the way, let's now move to our beloved Dragon's Rising new ninja, being Aaron, Sora and Wildfire, and luckily they will not break your bank as much as the core 6 actually can. Starting off with Aaron, his cheapest minifigure as we currently stand is actually just simply his season 1 look, a very good looking Aaron minifigure. It matches up to your Kai, it also is just a very nice look for him, and there's a reason why it was around for so long. But if you want him brand new, you're going to be paying £1.10 for this Aaron, and honestly it's a steal because it's possibly his best look. But if you do want his most expensive, you're actually going to be getting his Tournament of Sources look. And fun fact, I know I said I'm looking for, in my opinion, the complete and canon to the show look, so in this case it is without the shoulder pads, but the shoulder pad and the non-shoulder pad variants are basically the same price, so it actually comes down to you. But the Tournament of Sources is the most expensive version of Aaron currently, and it actually has a value of £5 brand new, so honestly you're again winning, because the most expensive one is actually quite easy to get. It is also just a very nice looking version of Aaron, so you kind of have your pick, but those are the options for the cheapest and the most expensive Aaron. We then get to Sora, and funnily enough, Aaron's most expensive is Sora's cheapest. Her Tournament of Sources look is actually the cheapest of the bunch. Again, this is the version without the shoulder pads, and in that case, it is actually going in at £1.46 brand new, which honestly is really good for one of the better looking versions of Sora. I really like this variant of her, and it was also the first major departure for her outfit. So honestly, again, you're kind of winning because her cheapest is debatably one of her best looks. However, then her most expensive variant is, funnily enough, her newest variant, which is her Spectral suit. And I will say for reference, because I'm going to show all these minifigures at the end, I don't have Spectral Sora, so please keep that in mind when you see all the minifigures at the end. But this version of her is currently the most expensive variant. This could be down to the fact that she is new and she is in a fairly expensive set, so keep that in mind if you are going to be getting a Sora, because it may go down in price. But as it stands, she is your most expensive expensive variant, and she comes in at a price of about £5.60. Honestly, quite good, and for a new minifigure as well, you're kind of winning in that regard. And then, like I said, finally you have got Wildfire for the Ninja, and funnily enough, she only actually has got 2 completed minifigures, because she's got her Season 1 look, and then she has had her Season 2 look since. So, one of them is just simply more expensive than the other, but her cheapest one is of course her Season 2 outfit, which is nice, it's just a bit overused. Look at my minifigure rant video for reference, but that is currently the cheapest version of Wildfire, and it actually still comes in at £3.20. So even though she is the cheapest version, she's actually one of the most expensive cheap minifigures on this list. But like I said, that means her Season 1 variant is the most expensive one. It is about £6.50 to get your hands on her brand new, which honestly is quite good, especially considering she was actually exclusive to one set. So it's actually decent in terms of pricing, and honestly quite a good one to get. Although, fun fact, I actually don't own Season 1 Wildfire currently. So again, in similar vein to Sora, she will be missing at the end. So we've got all of our Ninja done and dusted. That is all their cheapest and most expensive variants. So let's give them their master to actually go along with them. Of course, that is going to be Wu, and his cheapest variant is actually his Legacy Black variant, which honestly is a fantastic looking minifigure, and in my opinion one of the better looking Wus. So honestly, this is kind of a win in any regard, because he is only worth £1.30, which is a steal because he is definitely a standout in your Wu collection. Funnily enough, that version of Wu actually came before the most expensive variant of Wu, because his Season 11 variant is the most expensive canon suit when it comes to Wu. His caped variant is absolutely fantastic looking and has a value of £33 brand new, and honestly, it kind of reflects that. The print is fantastic, most of it is unique, and of course the addition of the cape is absolutely everything. But if you wanted a non-canon version of Wu that is more expensive, the brand new Legends Wu, which is based off of the Spectral suit, is currently more expensive, being £42. But like I said, it is not canon to the show, so I didn't include it in this one. But that is the most expensive Wu. And just like that, we're nearly to the end of the new Ninjago collection that you have formed. But let's talk about 2 more categories like I said. The first one is Garmadon, the most iconic villain of the show, also one of the more iconic things that have ever come out of Ninjago in general. So you've got to have him in there. His cheapest version, interestingly, is kind of based off of the same version of him. If you wanted the definitively most cheap version, you would actually go for his Legacy 2 armed variant, which is £1.30. But it is technically not canon, although it is also technically based off of Zane's flashback from Season 1. But if you do want a hard struck, this is definitely in the show, you're actually going to be getting his Pilot's minifigure, which is £2.90 brand new, which honestly is really good considering it's one of the oldest versions of Garmadon we've ever had. So I would honestly take that and run, because you're getting one of the OG Ninjago minifigures for the best price. But if you wanted the most expensive Garmadon, you would actually be moving over to his Season 8 Resurrected look. Honestly, this minifigure came out in 2 sets, the Temple of Resurrection and the Oni Titan, and it looks fantastic. It is an amazing version of Garmadon to have, and definitely one you should have. But brand new, it is £22. So even though it is definitely one of the cheaper of the most expensive minifigures that isn't a Dragon's Rising character, you're definitely getting a fantastic version of the character to go along in your collection. So I would definitely say you wouldn't be mad at this Garmadon pick, but at the same time I wouldn't be mad at the cheap one either. But it is, in my opinion, the essentials to any Ninjago minifigure collection. You got your core 6, you got your Dragon's Rising Ninja, and you've got the 2 Spinjitzu brothers. But if you wanted a little bit of an additional add, just to give it a little more flair, like I said, you could always add some allies. If you want the cheapest allies possible, honestly, you've got a fantastic selection to go off of, because the 3 cheapest allies are all Elemental Masters. You could get Tox, the Master of Poison, for £1.50 brand new. You could get Bolobo, the Master of Nature, for £1.60, and you could get Gravis, the Master of Gravity, for £1.65. 3 Elemental Masters, and fairly iconic to the show, for less than £5. That is fantastic. Then if you did want some of the most expensive allies for your Ninjago collection, you would actually be getting 1 Elemental Master and 2 of the allies. The most expensive of the bunch is Akita the Formling from Season 11. She's a fantastic minifigure, has all exclusive print, and just looks brilliant in any Ninjago collection. She's a fantastic minifigure, and I would definitely recommend her. You would then also be getting Karloff, the Master of Metal, a very nice and OG minifigure, definitely a nice one to have in your look, which is £25. And last but certainly not least, you would then be getting the original Pixel minifigure, a very nice looking one, definitely one of her better looking minifigures, and it is £11.60 brand new. A very nice range, a very nice diverse look, and honestly, a very good selection of minifigures to get your hands on. But if you wanted the most expensive ones, those are your 3. And there you have both of your Ninjago collections. Here they are right in front of you, and I think both of them honestly look fantastic for a lot of different ways. And honestly, I think they are both really nice to have for any Ninjago fan. You've got a variety in both, you've got some amazing characters all round, and I definitely think it's a fantastic start to your Ninjago minifigure collection. Of course, there are a lot more things that you could add to this collection down the line. You may be wondering what the cheapest armies are compared to the most expensive, or maybe some of the cheapest villains in comparison to the most expensive, and in that case, I will definitely do a follow-up if you are interested to know. But as of now, in my opinion, this is the essentials when it comes to any Ninjago collection, because there are ultimately always things that you could add more of, but this is one of the best ways to start things off in my opinion. But let me know what you do think of these minifigures, and which ones you would rather get over the other. But that then does leave the final begging question: what is the difference in the overall price if you wanted to have these minifigures? Now of course, prices can vary, you need to take into account shipping, but this is the base minifigure price for all of them. So of course, the numbers may be different when you actually come down to it, but I can't really account for pricing because it's different when it comes to everyone, in particular when it comes to shipping. But for the pure minifigures in of themselves, the cheap collection would actually only run you £20 and 66 pence, and for the amount of minifigures you're getting, that is fantastic. That is a lot of minifigures for such a low price, and honestly, in my opinion, it is the way to go. This is the way if you want a lot of Ninjago minifigures for a very good price. So honestly, I would recommend it for that reason alone. However, then the price for the most expensive Ninjago minifigures comes to an overall of £405 and 70 pence. That is a very, very, very sharp difference of about £380, and you're getting the exact same characters, just in different variants. And honestly, that is a lot of money overall. So if you were to go for something like that, definitely be prepared to spend out of your pocket if you want these variants, because that price definitely stacked up very quickly, to the point where I questioned if my math was incorrect. But that is the price for all of the exact same characters in their most expensive variants. So definitely keep that in mind if you're going to be going for the more expensive ones. They are fantastic minifigures, but it is up to you to decide whether £400 is worth it in your eyes, because honestly, that is a lot of money to consider, and for that reason alone, I kind of recommend the cheap ones. But that is, in my opinion, the cheap versus expensive Ninjago minifigure collections. And like I said earlier, if you do want to follow up, definitely let me know, because I had a lot of fun cataloging this. And honestly, if you want me to build different collections, different ideas, please let me know in the comments down below, because if you guys want it, I will definitely do it, because there are so many other criteria you could go for. You could ask for maybe a middle of the range minifigures or an abstract collection. There are a lot of different ideas you could go for, so if you do want to see it, definitely let me know. But that is about it for today, you guys, and thank you very much for watching. Take care. Okay, bye.